Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello. Happy Friday, Jeremy.
Yes, you too. Good to see you again. And welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with technology, change, innovation. And this week, we're going to talk a bit about insurtechs and a bit about face-to-face. And we also have a couple of clips around quantum computing, which is pretty interesting. And Ben, I have a special surprise feature for you, which you're going to either love or hate. But here we go. Let's start with the news. And we both spotted this, didn't we, Ben? I saw this, which is kind of a big story just in the technology space. Vestu investigation reveals a $4 billion fraud involving fake letters of credit. It's pretty widely reported. I think you saw it in Artemis as well. So it's a little bit complicated, but it's got some implications. Yeah. Well, pretty big implications, eh?
The Scottish insurtech Vestu. Anyway, it's a funny name, isn't it? As they all are for these things. It's obviously a big story, but actually reading between the lines, not that this is all alleged at the moment, so we will just give the usual disclaimers. But the report is that there has potentially been a forgery of collateral letters of credit, which has happened before. I think in various, it's not an uncommon type of fraud, I think, and this article here and others are actually fairly explicit that this relates to a Chinese bank potentially, where the suggestion is that some employees at the bank have acted in kind of collusion with this company, insurtech called Vestu, and the insurance. Well, it's an insurance story, I suppose, for two reasons. One is it's an insurtech, but I think it's effectively it's just a tech company. The Chinese bank says it is, of course, unaware of this situation, which maybe at certain levels it is, of course, and won't comment on it. But at the moment, the stories are going around, certainly around the market, of which will be available information, is which insurers in London market have exposure through their reinsurance policies, and a few of those are being mentioned, and this is a fairly large sum. I think one of the things is that originally it was reported, I think, in the insurers a 1 billion fraud, and now this has gone up to a total of 4 billion. And I think the commentary is that seems very high for an organization of Vestu's size. But I mean, several of the executives on the board, including the chief executive, have left. And so this will unravel, I think, over the next few weeks. But it's another big one, really. And I guess we will talk about some positive stuff, I think, about the insurtech market, but it can't be good for that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there are implications for the reputation, if you like, of that whole.
It's also, I'm not commenting on this particular case, but I think as investment gets stretched and businesses need that capital support, arguably the temptation to cut corners and to you believe that or present that you have the support when you don't is completely wrong, but it's a temptation, I guess. And maybe it is just symptomatic of the tight nature of the tech investment market at the moment as well.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. But let us move on to the Liber report. Now, we've been kind of talking about face-to-face and the future of offices and workspaces. And last week we touched on the underwriting room being closed to have a look of paint and a refurb, whatever they're doing there. But there was this report which kind of came out a few weeks ago from Lee. But do you want to just give us a heads up?
Yeah, so we were touching on this, and we've been talking about this topic as others have for quite some time, and we as Grace Church do some research into it, and I've been presenting various pieces and bits and bobs around this whole issue in conferences and so on. So I think it's been a very hot topic, and I think it has moved on as a discussion from the point at which we were in the COVID period to now. And yes, it's more fallout in a sense. So this is the report from Libra. It is, first of all, I'd say it's a good report. I think it's very interesting. It takes a particular angle, and it's very open about that this is about a report that is based on brokers, not on underwriters, technologists. It's very much a Lloyd's centric report as well. It doesn't take account, for example, of the company's markets views particularly. So I think it is admittedly and openly about where the Libra membership sees this, and I think therefore, because it's got the Libra stamp on it, it is a representation, and it pulls out some issues. Its main conclusions is that and I've kind of tried to summarize them here, is that not surprisingly, face-to-face is essential, and they break the market down into three kind of bits, which is if you like, the volume, which is pretty standard and doesn't necessarily need face-to-face, but the highly complex, which does. And then this kind of middle complex stuff, which they say equates to a very large tranche of business that does need some level of negotiation, and that in their view should be face to face, and certainly the views of the brokers in this study. The other areas of focus then that the research moves on to is very specifically about the Lloyd's room itself and the Lloyd's building, and how important that is perceived to be for reasons of efficiency to some extent. They see this as the cornerstone, the kind of USP, the representative, if you like, of the Lloyd's market or the London market. And I'll come back to what I think of some of these points. It also, another point is, it allows new entrants or even its smaller independent wholesale brokers to compete. So it means that a cross section of brokers can compete, and they won't get bundled out by the big boys. And one of the points that's made is, do you want a future that is just the three main brokers sending you an electronic quote and that's it, and that's the end of the thing, or do you want to have a negotiated thing? And then you have there's various other concepts brought in here that Lloyd's represents the concept of utmost good faith, the old handshake, whites of the eyes, etc. And risks are evaluated rather than based on an algorithm. So those are all kind of the key points. And then the other point that they touch on is whether broker lounges, or what we'd call trading spaces, are important. And I think there that again, they come and say that brokers are not too keen on these for some practical reasons. They're sort of, from what I can read here, which could be that brokers getting 15-minute slots can't get through security, don't have Lloyd's passes anymore, and therefore it doesn't really work that well. And because also they've got to trail around the market to several players, so there is a time issue and an efficiency issue of having to do that, whereas actually Lloyd's, comparatively, you may be able to do those risks separately. And then finally, technology support, which I don't think gets enough attention. I'll say that right now in this report. I think it does tend to get downplayed probably too much, even though the reports says that actually we concede that technology is an important part of the future and so on, but it is kind of somewhat dismissed as, well, what's the point in having technology when we can just go and meet somebody? I think that's kind of the feedback that's here, and I actually feel that that's an area that is somewhat weak in this report, because we haven't got expertise in here that's talking about what this technology might do in the future. We already know that technology is pretty clunky at the moment anyway, and quite embryonic in London, and modernisation is trying to address that. So I feel that while they are not trying this is not what the report is trying to do, but I just think it feels light, very light in that area. And the point of saying that is because technology does have a role to play in all industries and all sectors at the moment. Whether you believe that to be an all-encompassing role or a partial role, I think is you have to take it on board. I think, and so where do I think this report takes us to? I think it. My view is that it's a good report, and it focuses on an important aspect of the market, which is face-to-face trading, and that should not go away. Its second point, I think, around the Lloyd's building or the Lloyd's room as a trading centre has some good points, but I don't think I would entirely concur with the argument that it makes that Lloyd's has a rightful place, I think, as it puts it, to be the kind of epicenter of the London market. I think it is iconic. I think it is part of the brand, but the fact is that the underwriting footfall, if you like, and presence in that building has dropped off significantly. Some of that is, as they say in the report, down to regulatory issues, complexity issues, remediation in a hard market issues. All of those things, yes, are in play, but it does feel like there is a preference on the part of the underwriters, and they're not represented in this report, to be not in that building as much as they are. So that is, actually a reasonable thing if the insurers want to do that and feel that's the right thing to do. They have invested in their buildings and the broker lounges and the trading spaces, and they might well feel that actually it is the place they want to do business, and they'll have to argue that out with the brokers. I think the other thing, I think, kind of interesting points, small points, and then I'll kind of try and wrap this up. What some of the brokers are saying, the trouble is when we go into the offices of the insurers, you feel a bit like you might be at a disadvantage because it's their home territory and so on and so forth. Well, I'm afraid, in my view, that's just competition, right? If an insurer has a lovely building and they want you to meet them there, that is kind of the way it is. I think it's rather kind of nostalgic to ask for some sort of fair level playing field, because those broker lounges, those meeting spaces have been working for the last 10 years, and they've been developing quite a lot. And we get a lot of data which would say they're extremely useful for brokers because they work in those places. They're pleasant places to work, and you can't do that as easily in the Lloyd's building. And the insurers will argue they get a lot of brand takeout and other advantages and benefits from having those spaces, which we can evidence. So I think that debate has to be. I think we have a balanced debate. We have to have an answer back, if you like, from the underwriters, or just a collaboration around this. And then the final point, I do, as I said, I think the technology point is really rather important, I think, because what this report does not really delve into is what are the possibilities for e-trading systems like PPL and Whitespace and others, EBICs, for actually helping brokers to efficiently, place simple and less simple risks in the market. Now, we do a lot of work in the UK regional market. Yes, there's a debate there too, and there are all sorts of issues and challenges in moving into a more technologized place, but there also is a significant cost saving and actually logically a release of talent because that technology is doing heavy lifting. So in a funny way, I think this sort of report where you argue for face-to-face has to also face up to the reality that technology will be one of the solutions potentially to more negotiation and human interaction. So I think there are I think it's a really good report, lots of interesting things in here, and hats off to them doing it. But I would say it's the start of the debate, and it needs to accept that there's got to be a balancing of all of the views in the market and all the players and all the parts of it.
Yeah. So I just add a couple of things to that. I think, and I kind of mentioned this kind of last week, that there are tensions in this. It's not argument, but discussion around becoming the most advanced digitally enabled trading area, which is Lloyd's kind of ambition for modernisation and this having a traditional underwriting room, physical space to do business. So it is. I think you're right, Ben. I think the other reason why I think this is just the start of the conversation is because the rate and pace of the technology change, and we're going to come on to this later when we ask Paolo to talk about quantum computing. It's just you can't really before those technologies mature, you can't really understand the impact that they're going to have. And just to say that actually this is the point in time and this is where we're going to be and this is how it's going to be from now on in, I think is just too a narrow view. I think you're right. You need to have that kind of broad.
Yeah, it's an assertion, isn't it? I mean, you could equally have had a report that asserts, and they are out there, of course. There are more of those, arguably, which say that digital is the future, and that's that. You don't need all this, and we've had that debate going on in the LinkedIn comments below the show, and that's great, and that is a debate. I do think, in lots of ways, this comes back to, though, classically is the ROI. Is what's the cost of doing business? This report doesn't have execs from these companies, broking or insurers, who look at the numbers and say, what is the cost of trading in this market? And at the moment, it is quite expensive to trade in Lloyd's, and that cost has had to come down. That's why we've got the modernisation program and so on, and why we've got technology being developed. So it is not just enough for me to say, look, it's great to have all people trading and we need to do it in Lloyd's room. That is too simplistic for me, an answer to the future of this market. That there is, you can't hold back progress either. People are saying, and I had a debate yesterday where people said, well, in certain areas, there's a great risk in going all the way through to e-trading of all risks, because suddenly you lose risks are force fitted into technological solutions or standards or products, and that's absolutely legit, right? I mean, it's just you have to kind of put these things out as you go along, but it doesn't mean that humans good and technology's bad. It's back to the balance, really. So I and I'm a bit like you. I'd say that all of these reports, it's a bit of a seesaw. If you get one report said humans are the brilliant, most best thing ever, and then the other is like digital tech is a bit, that's a bit of a waste of, time in a sense. Let's get to the point at which we bring these arguments together and at least decide on the key principles.
And I think Lorna agrees with us. So human intelligent AI working together, make it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that comment, and I can tell you the research supports that exactly. But you've got to free up. The technology enables the freeing up of people to be innovative, and then even then though, you've got to make sure you've got the right talent and the sort of people who want to be creative and innovative and have a desire to do that. And I think reading between the lines of the Lieber report, which is an interesting area, is do we have the right sort of talent who want to do that? It's not just a case of them being in Lloyd's. Talented entrepreneurial people will do it anywhere. They'll do it at Costa or a Starbucks or wherever. They'll just they'll make it happen, and we need more of that too. So it's a good start. I just kind of feel we want to move forward into a more joined up, collaborative discussion about all of this.
Yeah, good. Right, thanks, Ben. It's a good discussion, and as we've said, one that we'll carry on, I am sure. So let's move on to another InsurTech story that actually we both saw. I also had it on mine as well. So this I saw this on LinkedIn actually pretty much yesterday or this morning. And a McKinsey report looking at InsurTech and some of the reasons why the UK is the central or global centre for InsurTech investment. I thought it'd be a good time, Ben, to bring in a new feature that I made up. It's called Down the Line. So I've got an expert on the phone who can give us some insights into all this stuff. So hopefully we've got him on the line. Hi there, can you hear me?
What up, though? It's Big Snoop D-O double G, and I'm an English voice from the United States.
Great, good to have you on, Snoop Dogg. Didn't know you were that into into London Market Insurance Matters, but I did send you the PDF, and I just thought perhaps you could start off by telling us what really is a definition of insurtech for you, because we often talk about this.
According to the PDF file, insurtech refers to the use of technology to innovate and improve the insurance industry. Insurtech firms leverage digital tools such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the Internet of Things to create new products, streamline processes, and enhance the customer experience. The goal of insurtech is to make insurance more accessible, affordable, and customer-centric, while also driving growth and innovation in the industry.
That's great. Good to know. That's kind of our definition as well. So we don't like insurance companies calling themselves insurtech. So that's good. Could you just give us just finally kind of the top 5? I know you're not great with numbers, Snoop Dogg, and you might get a bit confused, but maybe just the top 5 points of this report. What are they?
The main findings of the report are: 1. The UK is a global leader in insurtech with a thriving ecosystem of startups, investors, and incumbents. 3. 2. Insurtechs are focusing on creating painkillers, not vitamins, by offering new products that cover underserved segments or cater to new risks. 23. The regulatory environment in the UK is supportive of innovation and experimentation, which has helped to create a fertile ground for growth. 24. Insurtechs can leverage technology to develop more accurate risk models and create new products that are more tailored to customer needs and preferences. 25. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the adoption of digital technologies in the insurance industry, creating new opportunities for insurtechs.
Yeah, agree with that.
6. Insurtechs face several challenges, including regulatory uncertainty, data privacy concerns, and the need to build trust with customers. 7. Collaboration between insurtechs and incumbents is essential for the industry to reach its full potential. 3.
That's great. Thanks for joining us, Snoop Dogg. It's great to talk to you again. Thanks a lot.
That's very good. That's he's the Priti Patel or the Diane Abbott of numbers in public public debate. Yeah, very good. Yes.
He was.
Yeah, look, there we are. Down with the kids. Snoop Dogg's view.
Exactly right. But yeah, I got ChatGPT to pull out the findings, and then I've got a bit of software to get Snoop Dogg to read it. So it's quite fun, isn't it? But it's a pretty good report actually, and it does have some interesting, as Snoop Dogg just told us, some interesting insights into what it doesn't touch on is kind of it does slightly touch on the pressure of the kind of financial models and bringing more money into insurtechs. We've talked about it over the last 12 months that the investment in insurtech has, fallen off a cliff, really, if you look at its heyday a few years ago. But I think there is still a lot of really interesting startup companies that are looking at different areas of insurance. And there's still, you look at the value chain and you can still see opportunities to streamline and create new products and give a better customer experience. I was at an event on Wednesday that actually had a couple of clients in the room, and they were just still talking about what a terrible experience they had as soon as claims were coming in. And it was all mainly around the data they then had to provide that they really had already provided, and then the communication between the different parties in the value chain. And you're just going, man, this is just the basics, and we spend so much time going, oh, the future and what, but we haven't really got the basics right, especially in claims, I'd say.
Well, I think the elephant in the room, if you like, for insurance, and everybody knows this, is data. It's weak. There's lots of data, but it's very hard for anybody in a frontline role or a claims role to access that at any given time. And we've grown up, with lots of positives about insurance and how it operates and things, but we've got to the point, as of many financial services, where we've got a very dislocated front and back end. And some of those, arguably, some of the risks are underwritten on very little data or knowledge, and then the claims teams have to pick up the pieces with incomplete data. So that doesn't create a good situation for those clients. And and I think you're reflecting on something that is sort of the Achilles heel, if you like, of the industry as technology develops in other sectors. So those clients, those customers of the industry start to notice much more its weaknesses. And I think we will go through this period now as it opens up more and becomes less traditional. The expectations will shift and change. So that's one thing you've got to manage quite carefully is, we're going to technologize and modernize and do all that sort of thing. And then people say, well, what have you done and where's it happening? And it doesn't seem to be there yet. So yeah, it's a difficult job.
Definitely. So thanks Snoop Dogg for those insights. We'll perhaps get more rappers on to talk about insurance matters in the London market, maybe.
Well, we did all that and didn't swear once, which is good.
Yeah, I could have made him, couldn't I?
Well, probably not allowed to, are you? It's the ethical basis of ChatGPT is to not allow that.
Oh, well. Where's the fun? Oh well, there we are. Right, let's move on. So we're going to play a clip now. So just keeping with the technology vibe. So this is Paolo Cuomo, who is friend of the show, great person. If you don't know him, you should be linking with him on LinkedIn. And he is talking here about quantum computers and their kind of practical application for solving some of the challenges that the world faces. So let's play the clip and then we'll come back and have a chat.
Right. So we talked a bit about problems, and this is a slide that IBM often use, right? That say, as humans, there's a bunch of problems that we can solve today, conceptually and with the computers we've got. And then this sort of big grey box, which are all the problems that we know about that we can't mathematically solve today. And what we're saying is that quantum computers will play a role in solving some of them, by no means all of them. But what gets really interesting, not germane to today, but interesting conceptually, is actually it's only once we have fully functioning quantum computers will we start to necessarily work out what all the use cases are. And the sort of slightly trite analog to this is if we talk about smartphones. When we had the first smartphones a decade or more ago, people were kind of quite excited because, hey, you could have all your photos on your phone, you could have all your music on your phone. I don't think anyone at that point was saying, hey, you can pay for your parking on your phone, you'll have your train ticket on your phone. And even if we'd got a bunch of smart people sitting in a room for days saying, what will be the way humans use smartphones in a decade and a half time, would have missed the majority of what we're actually doing. It's only once it comes out that a combination of sort of creative innovation and capitalism drives ideas. So this whole bit here is actually quite interesting because there'll be questions we didn't even know we needed to ask that suddenly we'll be able to answer. So what is being considered? I said insurance isn't a sort of particular priority for those people thinking about quantum computing. So optimization, one thing that people believe quantum computers are going to be very good at is optimizing maybe relatively small volumes of data, but very large combinations. So there's a problem called the traveling salesman problem. And this is if you have a person who's got to move between a certain number of cities, what is the optimal way to get them between those cities based on certain parameters to do with distance, time, petrol usage, etc. And that is a problem. If you've got 10 nodes, it takes a certain amount of time. Using classic computer, if you add an 11th node, it takes a whole load more time. If you add a 12th node, a whole load more time. And that rapidly becomes unsolvable, even to our discussion, Adrian, with the most powerful computers we've got. The way a quantum computer approaches that problem means that it is not bothered, frankly, by the number of nodes. So if you add a second node, a third node, a fourth node on top of what you've got, it takes a bit longer, but not meaningfully longer. So any problem where you want to optimize around nodes is important. Now, you might be thinking, well, yawn, how important can that be? Well, actually, you can dig rapidly into any number of industries. So clearly someone who's delivering parcels around wants to optimize that, but also someone who wants to move airplanes around. And you can think about a whole load of physical things. If you work at Intel, then actually you're trying to optimize of the billions of chips on your microprocessor, you're trying to optimize for the connectivity between the billions of transistors on your chip. you're trying to optimize. So the type of optimization that a quantum computer is going to help, that we can sort of easily understand in terms of getting a truck or a delivery person to the right place, is actually relevant, for example, in microchips as well. There's a school of thought that says quantum computing is going to be very useful for simulating sort of real systems being biological systems, chemical reactions, etc. And the idea there is that can there be a whole bunch of drug design that is done on the computer before it needs to be done in reality, therefore compressing timelines. Or vice versa, maybe you've done the first bit in reality, but then you want sort of variations on this drug design, maybe to suit people with sort of different genetics. Could you use the quantum computer to shorten that? And actually, if we think of one of the areas that it's being looked at very seriously is by some of the drug design companies, because they see a real potential to compress their R&D cycles. Similar concept, new materials. There's a whole load of simulation that, in theory, can be done with quantum computers around potential new materials. Again, cutting out stages of the R&D process, shortening it right down, leads to EV. Some people look at the fact that some of the car manufacturers are looking at quantum computing, and they presume it's just to try and optimize Google Maps for the sat-nav, which is great, but is not necessarily a smart use of billions. If, however, by looking at materials differently, you can optimize the way that you're building batteries, then we all know the biggest challenge when it comes to EV rollout, is the cost, the reliability, the weight, etc., and the need for rare earth metals in batteries. And so those two are nicely connected. City planning links here. There's so much data available now to a city planner in terms of who's walking when, what trains link to what, which traffic lights change at what time. That information is all available. If you try and turn that into a simulation, your computer breaks. Now, as you use more and more compute power, you can increase the size of your simulation, but in theory, a quantum computer can help you with that. And then, because no talk on technology will be complete without climate, a lot of these points play into our battle around climate change. And one of the areas in particular, some 2% or whatever of the world's natural gas is used to produce fertilizer through some process called the Haber-Bosch process, which is over 100 years old and basically hasn't been optimized. The sense is that if you can use some of this sort of quantum approach to process optimization of materials, you can actually change how you're making fertilizer. Boom, suddenly you've saved 1% of the world's gas usage in one go. So this is, to my mind, where it gets more interesting. On the insurance side, if we had a little round table now and talked about how it'd be used, I think we would underwhelm ourselves. We'd say, hey, we do Monte Carlo simulations here, or we want to do fraud detection here. But actually, I don't think any of those are exciting in the way that, in terms of getting people to invest, in the way that these are exciting for executives in those industries. So the way I look at it as pertinent from the insurance side, actually, is much more through the lens of we're underwriting risks. And if a new technology comes along, what does that mean in terms of the risks we're underwriting? And my sense is that most of this is not changing the risk. If we were having a talk now on 3D printing, if we were having a talk now on generative AI, anyone who's an underwriter and actuary in the room knows they're nervous because they don't understand these new risks. And certainly sort of nanobots and nanomaterials over the last few years as a new technology have been getting all sorts of people nervous about what that might mean from an insurance point of view. I don't think quantum computing is something that should be getting our underwriters or actuaries nervous, with the one exception that some of you have heard about, which is that the same math, essentially, that can solve this type of thing can also decrypt a lot of standard encryption methodologies. So there's a whole load of talk on about the quantum apocalypse and the idea that suddenly overnight, when we have a quantum computer, then we're going to be able to hack all of the internet and all of our protected data. And I guess there's 2 points of view. One is that we're not going to have quantum computers that powerful for a while, so we're probably going to be okay. The flip side is upgrading IT systems, as we all know, takes an awfully long time. So it may take 10 years before quantum computers can decrypt our encryption, but if it takes us 15 years, or even if it takes us 10 years, we don't start for 5 years to upgrade our IT, is there a clear and present danger? And that's something that every CIO and every CISO should have in their mind. The other intriguing side of that is something called harvest today, decrypt tomorrow. that says if you've got some data that is going to be valuable in 15 years' time, and most of our data isn't, but if it's medical data, certain financial data, government data, that could be valuable in 15 years. Well, you steal it now, you don't tell anyone, so they don't realize it's being stolen, or frankly, you could tell them, but you've stolen it anyway, and then you just sit on it over here. And then when you've got the quantum computing power, then you decrypt it and do whatever nefarious activities. And what's intriguing is that people aren't going to have to buy their own quantum computers. You're going to access quantum computing via the cloud, so you will buy a second or a minute or an hour of IBM quantum compute time. And the algorithms that decode encrypted data can't be spotted. So therefore, it will just run it as a mathematical algorithm. So there's an absolute sense of we've got to get our head around what that might mean.
Good talk about that. What I like about it is that it is not going, oh, this is amazing technology, it's going to change the world tomorrow. It's kind of just a very kind of, this is something you should probably be aware of. It is going to change things in the future, not right now, but here are some of the practical applications of it as and when it develops. So yeah, it's a really good talk, and I could listen to Paolo all day talking about this stuff because he puts it in such an easy to digest way, and also the implications for us working in insurance as well.
Yeah, but he talks about the applications, which is important. I mean, the actual underlying challenge, as I understand it, for this for the people doing this, is to understand exactly what quantum actually means in terms of computing, and they're quite some way off that. But the sense is of a breakthrough, and then once you get it right, suddenly you have a very, very different situation. But my takeout from a lot of this is it is simple in a sense that it just allows you to do what we already do, but much, 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 much faster. But that very fundamental change is potentially seismic, really, because I think they quoted things like COVID. That was very quick and took 6 months to get the right thing, and they kind of got a bit lucky. But you could do those things in 2 minutes or whatever, 30 seconds, and so the advances, just outside of Paolo's comments on insurance, the potentially interesting things I think more globally are that insurmountable or problems that need to be proven, like climate scenarios, which are very complex, and part of the inertia is the argument for and against, could be solved, could be sorted very quickly by these models and things. So I do actually, like, there's such a lot of hype around tech, but I do really think that quantum isn't necessarily one of those. It's very interesting, and it's a relevant area because quantum, I've been reading about, and it clearly, quantum is proven. It's not one of these new things. I mean, quantum is, an area of mind-blowingly complex things that even the quantum physicists don't understand. But it was the basis of, the nuclear weapons and all that sort of stuff. So we've got all of that history, really. So it's part of our journey, in not just in science terms or computing. It's about understanding what it is and how it all works. So it's really fundamental stuff. So Paolo's point that it's in the cloud is right, but it's also just going to be, understanding why things do what they do in our world. And you'd think, I mean, insurance then seems very small against that, but clearly that's part of what insurance tries to do. It tries to work out what the risk is.
Yeah.
So I think it is a really interesting area, and Paolo's done a good job of both explaining and articulating it, and very valiantly keeping on pushing it out there. But I think we should listen, and of course, until it happens, as you said earlier, nobody's going to be jumping around on it, but I think it is well worth watching.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. I will. I'll put up the full video. I think it's sort of 25 minutes in total. But thanks, Paolo, for that contribution. That's great. Okay, so that's it from us. Let's just wrap things up. bit of sport, Ben. It all blew up in the Tour de France this week, didn't it? Well,
Yeah, that's it. That's the end of it now, though.
Podcast, sorry. Yes, really. So be watching that. Interested in the
Have been
final.
watching that. I thought that was very good. The cricket looks good for us too at the moment, so that's great. And I am definitely going paddleboarding this weekend. I was blown off the water last week.
Oh yes.
Health and safety gone mad. 40-mile-an-hour winds. What's the problem?
Yeah, fine. I cycled down to the coast last week. God, it was terrible because it was a headwind. It was, oh my God. And I got down there and I had my stuff, like my swimming stuff, and they had all the red flags out because the waves were so big. So I'm not surprised they didn't let you go paddleboarding.
Pretty windy.
So yeah, make sure you get some footage of that, Ben. That'd be good.
Yes, I will. Yes.
I am going to a festival in the northwest, so I'm going to get very wet. So I've chosen the weekend where it's going to rain the whole time. So I'll let you know how that goes next week.
Yes, we are rather in contrast to the rest of the world at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah, there we are. Right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We shall see you next Friday. Have a good weekend.
Good weekend. Bye.